Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We'll give it just another minute for everyone to come on in. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, and welcome to Keeping Your Business Intelligent About AI. Today, we'll examine the ins and outs of generative AI products like ChatGPT and discuss what your company should think about with this rapidly evolving technology. So we'll cover questions including, what are the privacy concerns? What should be your red line for your staff? How can you best leverage it for success? And we'll explore practical solutions to balance risk versus reward. Before we get started, please note that this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website, StaySafeOnline.org, and on YouTube within the next few days. And if you have questions at any time during this webinar, please submit them to the Q&A box, and we'll try to answer as many as we can by the end of the webinar. So first, just a bit about the National Cybersecurity Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization, and it's our mission to make sure everyone has access to free, easy to understand materials that help them stay safe online and learn about cybersecurity. So we run a number of programs throughout the year for businesses, college students, security professionals, but at the end of the day, we try to reach everyone, kids, teens, parents, seniors, really anyone that uses technology. Our programs include Cybersecurity Awareness Month every October. We have Cybersecure My Business for small and mid-sized business owners. So you can check us out on our website, StaySafeOnline.org, to see all of our free resources and toolkits available and to follow along with the events we hold throughout the year. So now please welcome our speakers today, Barry Eitel, content writer for the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and Dr. Margaret Cunningham, Senior Staff Behavioral Engineer at Robinhood. Dr. Margaret Cunningham is at Robinhood, where she focuses on data safety and improving security, trust, safety, and privacy outcomes. Prior to joining Robinhood, Dr. Cunningham worked for ForcePoint as a principal product manager for behavioral analytics, as well as contributing as a subject matter expert for R&D and innovation teams. So now I'll kick it over to Barry and Margaret to get us started.
Hey, Margaret, how's it going?
Thanks for having me, Barry.
And welcome to everyone out online. So AI, have you heard of it? No, it's
I heard it's a thing.
Yeah.
I heard it's a thing. It keeps coming up everywhere. This has been good. Yeah.
How about just do some brief, like what is AI and what is generative AI?
AI is a field of study that's been around for a really long time. I think, once people started getting interested in what we can do with computers, one of the primary interests was, can we make these machines more like people? Can we, create some type of intelligence in machines? And, I guess like when I was young, the amount of storage that's in my phone is like however many times bigger than what we had in our original computers. So we had this huge barrier between what the technologies could do and what we wanted them to do because of the processing power and things like that. So recently we've had so many changes in this space, and we have access to so much data that we've been able to kind of get over some of those original challenges in compute. And things like very targeted AI projects, such as like, can we make it easier to make a healthcare diagnosis, have expanded to be much more general and successfully general. So generative AI, which is this new hype, is not only allowing us to, use machines to give us specific knowledge, but more general knowledge, and what the machines are generating is new and novel. So it's creating something, and that's a huge barrier from like that big leap over the fence from where we started in the field.
Yeah, and we'll go into this later, but where do these like large language models and then some of the other AI products that produce images, video, where are they actually pulling their data from to like make this sort of remixed content?
They have big data sets, and they all have like their proprietary methods and where they're getting data from. If you are familiar with OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, and Dolly, which is, it will draw pictures for you. They have a whole bunch of information about what their training sets are. And they even provide some details on like how they're tuning the models, how they're making them more accurate. And so the first versions that were released, I believe, had data up until like 2021. So originally, if you asked ChatGPT, like, was the weather last week strange for the month of August in, Hawaii, it would say like, I'm really sorry, it's hard to tell because I have this gap. But now the newer versions have more power, and some of them are set up to use the web and find current information. So it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It changes a lot of things.
Yes.
It is evolving. And I was laughing, thinking about this, Barry. We talked about doing this, and we're like, yeah, let's have this discussion. And I feel like even over the past 2 or 3 weeks, things have gone even deeper and further than I imagined. And I'm pretty imaginative.
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT became widely available to the public. That was just mid-December, or like yeah, has not been a long time. And okay, so why do you think everyone is either scared and or overjoyed about artificial intelligence right now?
So I think we should start with the fun stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because really, like, there are some things to kind of, maintain concern or caution about, but ultimately it's here, we're using it. And so we should try to find the strengths and the fun parts. You can pretty much ask these systems to summarize things for you, tell you stories, have a creative dialogue. There's a lot of really nice, cool ways that it can simplify workflows, or even create like a faster way to come up with a set of ideas. Like, what do you think the top 5 headlines would be about AI next week? And then some of them aren't going to be very good, but it kind of removes that writer's block that people get sometimes. And it can really serve as a tool to unstick people when they're working on challenging problems. These programs also, these models also can help people with coding, art. It's pretty limitless. And, as someone who has tried to learn a lot of different things in my life and not always had a way to get an answer to a question, I think that the availability of these tools is changing people's access to information. And it's also like helping people learn something more quickly, or, if it's, have you ever had to ask someone a dumb question?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No embarrassment. Yeah, ChatGPT is never embarrassed.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that, right? So there's this kind of relief in a way that you have something that you can turn to that can give you complex responses, or who can see, I'm already calling it who who can it they can support you in ways that like are 24/7. And maybe help you pick up the pace sometimes too.
Yeah. I mean,
But
people
those are
do
kind of the fun things.
workout routines, all sorts of stuff. I mean, generally, as we're going forward, I think it works best, and probably like will for the long time. Like if you already kind of know what the answer, and letting it uh uh so you can like fact check it right away, as opposed to just asking it a question, or asking it like, what should my workout routine be? And it gives you something nuts and dangerous. But like if you already kind of know the subject matter, then you can say like, well, that's a good idea, that's not, so you have to bring your own intelligence to it.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a great segue to some of the risks.
Mhm.
I hate to steer us
Yeah,
that way,
no,
but
yeah,
it's a real
no, it's
thing.
good.
And
Yeah.
I think it's mostly really important to talk about it as much as we can, to sort of normalize what it means on the risk side.
Yep.
Um, you know, in some cases, if you don't know how to check it, you
Yeah.
may be introducing something, or like taking something like, okay, well, I believe this information, or like this code looks great, or this is exactly how I should do this step by step. Um, you may be sort of trusting an unreliable narrator.
Mm-hmm.
I think going back to like high school English class, the unreliable narrator
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes what we're getting from generative AI systems.
And it's
And
so
it's not,
confident.
yeah. And it's hard to tell because it chats in such a, conversational way. It sounds like an authority on the
Mm-hmm.
topics that we ask it about. And it has like a high degree of trust just because of the language that it uses and the syntax and things like that. But yeah, if I would be unlikely to ask it questions and trust the response unless
Yeah.
I had some subject matter expertise in the area.
Yeah, definitely. And so moving on to like the business side, what are privacy concerns with employees using AI models to help with their work? And so like if people are trying to automate or like kind of offload some of like writing computer code using an AI model, what are the risks involved in that for the company?
So there are quite a few.
Mhm.
So there are a bunch of extensions that you can sort of sync up with generative AI that are tempting to use because it really can simplify your day to day. And this might be something like, okay, I have this, complicated system. I have it kind of written out. The code has a structure to it. I'm going to move this code that like my company owns into this service, and it's going to draw the picture for me. It's going to like draw the diagram for me. Or, I'm going to cut and paste some stuff and have it check it and make sure it's like the optimized, or, see if it can make some improvements or find some efficiencies in what I've written. And there might be some sensitive proprietary information in that. One of the big use cases that we see tossed out a lot is like chat bots and customer service bots. And that's another area of risk because inadvertent copy paste that includes like a customer's information or data is not good. It's not great to put that stuff into a generative AI system. And the reality is we can't really say exactly what happens to it. I mean, we have some idea. We have data processing diagrams. We can talk with these companies offering these services. But ultimately, the models are so complex that if someone said, you need to delete this, you need to delete my data, if it's there, it's not really possible to do that. And one of the things that we worry about a lot is making sure that people who have the right to ask for their data to be deleted, making sure that we can do that. So we need to be able to deliver on that. And that's a big risk for businesses who deal with personal information.
So don't put your proprietary code into
No.
ChatGPT. We don't recommend that. Yeah.
No, I would say hard no.
Yeah.
I sort of act like, is my legal and compliance person sitting on my shoulder? Would they be cool with me entering this in? No.
Yeah.
But that said, like, blocking it or like saying, no, you absolutely can't use this at work is not the right way either. So, I focus a lot on the word safety versus something like security, because we're not going to like contain things in this like magical safe spot.
Mhm.
The safe spot doesn't exist. We
Mhm.
have to find a way to let people innovate and work with appropriate guardrails.
So let's talk about guardrails. So if you're a business, like what are some different things you can do, or like what are some actionable steps you should be thinking about when coming up with an AI policy? Like we just said, don't allow people putting like proprietary information out there. There was an issue with Samsung where I think something like that happened. So I guess like if there's a spectrum from like blocking AI use and not permitting any AI use among your staff, like if that's like the most severe you can get, what are some like and what are some ways other guardrails that are like less intense than that and probably less like more actually enforceable?
Yeah. So I just start by saying this is like very generalized, right? So this is just my
Yeah,
personal
yeah,
general
definitely.
thoughts on this. When we think about data and we think about people, we aren't really living in a solely technology driven domain. There are a lot of factors to consider. And one thing that I find to be a challenge for a lot of companies is that they focus very much on the technical part and not quite enough on the person part. And
Mhm.
I'm a psychologist, so I like to highlight the person part. So I'll put that little bias out there. But you can't do it alone. Okay, there's not like one team that has the knowledge and expertise to manage this risk in a company. It has to be interdisciplinary.
Mhm.
AI is interdisciplinary. Remember, it's supposed to, mirror human intelligence.
Mhm.
And, one thing we know about people is that we are not all the same. So if you think about like what it would take to manage the risk of a person, it's not going to be like just the legal team or just the IT team or just a compliant. Like it has to be a holistic, well-rounded, interdisciplinary team who's working together to come up with a strategy, a message, and also the tools to make it work. So, the team is critical,
Mhm.
but there's also ways that you can build out formal relationships with some of the companies that offer, large language models and other generative AI tools. And by formalizing the relationship, you can create safeguards and have a way better understanding of, where the limitations are for your company's data versus if you're using like a free version or if you're using like a service that also uses it. So there's all these like, you
Mhm.
know, tools that kind of use it, kind of don't, and you can
Yeah.
get stuck in there. So yeah, it's partially creating the playground so that you can provide a space for innovation and having fun.
Do you think?
But then it's
do you-
yeah.
Oh no. Do you
No,
think
go ahead.
moving forward there's going to be more companies that have AI agreements that or AI policies that employees have to follow with how they engage with these platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's been a huge proliferation of tools that are meant to track or block or monitor interactions with generative AI tools as well.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a tough thing because I think everybody feels very monitored. And so in a sense, this is kind of forcing some companies to kind of increase that monitoring that can make the workforce like kind of feel yucky or like they don't trust their company anymore. And that's very unfortunate because I think that one of the ways that we have to live within a spectrum of risk is by increasing trust. And so we have this balance again of, technologies that propagate more technologies, and people are left in the middle going like, what in the world? And like, can I live? Um, and so I think that's going to be a tricky balance that companies are going to have to consider, because we should be trusting our workforce, and we should be working on finding ways to improve the relationship instead of kind of putting off, like making people feel like put off about these things. So.
Yeah, I feel like trust is always good.
It is always good.
Mhm.
And feeling safe and having psychological safety at work feels good. And feeling like your manager trusts you to do good work feels good. People who feel good at work do better work.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a balance.
And I think part of the trust is just having, open conversations about open AI, like where is it acceptable, what can you share with it, what you shouldn't share with it.
Yeah. And I think most like moderately mature companies have like data classification and data handling policies and expectations on, like how we're working with different types of data and trying to manage privacy concerns. This is an extension of that. So really, it's not necessarily a whole new world. It's just the very shiny thing that we're all coping with right now in the world of data safety. But yeah, we've been working on this problem for a long time. What do we do with this stuff? What do we do with all this data? How can we treat it responsibly? And I feel like my data is an extension of me as a person. So how we work with it should reflect how we feel we should treat people.
That's good. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's talk about some more fears. Not just the robot dystopia side of it, but I think there's also a fear out there that if your company is not leveraging AI to the fullest, that you're going to be left behind. And do you think that is the case, and why?
Yeah. I mean, imagine
why
if
not?
you're on a beach cruiser competing against people in the Tour de France. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing, you could be as fit and ready to go as everyone else. This is a tool that's helping people go faster. And innovation is critical. When your company starts looking like it's falling behind, if you're not delivering, products or features or value quickly, you get lost in the market fairly quickly. So I think there is a ton of pressure, both at the organization level and on the individual level, regarding just, what are the expectations for productivity? If I'm not hyper productive, am I behind? I had a friend of mine say, you don't show up to a bodybuilding competition anymore if you haven't kind of had a little bit of juice. And can we compete naturally is the takeaway. And maybe not. There's a risk to both.
Let's what would we say these risks are? Well, we were talking about, like, I don't think either of us think that you have to be an early adopter of this to succeed. I think there's some value in kind of waiting and see where the technology goes before trying to like use AI in everything you do and optimize yourself like to the nth level. Because it doesn't seem like you do just seem to have to really worry about how your data is being used by these AI companies.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like a slow poke, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't always get the newest thing, but I don't usually fall too far behind. There are folks who love the risk. They love hopping on and doing the new thing and testing it out and breaking it,
Mhm.
suffering the consequences of breaking things. And then there are others who are like, I'm going to let you do that for a little while, and then I'm going to see what I want to
Mhm.
do. And I think there are very conservative, safe ways to play around with these tools. Um, but integrating it into like a, your software development lifecycle and not having robust checks is probably pretty risky.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of different strategies, and there's so many. Like I actually don't even think we've come to terms with just how we're going to use these tools.
Mhm.
So it's going to feel really cutting edge across most industries for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, and I do think like maybe like if you're not super comfortable with it, don't take it too seriously yet. Like have a little bit of fun, or just don't,
Yeah.
you know?
And then
The
looking
novelty
toward,
wore off for me. I was like chatting with it, and then I was like, oh, okay, like I kind of get this.
yeah,
You know,
let's move on to the next thing. Yeah. No.
sure.
So talking about the future, um, what do you what do you think the future of work will look like as artificial intelligence products get rolled into more tech products that we all use daily? I mean, we know Google is uh, getting involved with even just how you use it's the search labs, or like GitHub and Microsoft Word. Even like how do you think um like it seems like AI is going to be incorporated into a lot of what we do moving forward, just using the internet.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're not going to notice it. It's going to
Mhm.
become so pervasive that we won't really notice it. Um, Suggestions, uh, how searches come up, what your searches look like, are going to be shaped quite a bit by these models.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
We
Well,
do,
that's
I
one
mean,
word
like,
for it.
yeah, and I'm just like, I get annoyed when it suggests what I'm going to write and it's right. I'm like, how did
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Stop it. Like, I wasn't going to say
I'm not predictable.
anyway. I didn't know, and I am. And so I think that there's going to be a little bit of like sadness
Mhm.
as we realize um, just how many things it can do for us.
Mhm.
Um, I I find technology and innovation highly emotional. People don't like to talk about like the emotions of new technologies, but um, this is, at the core of humanness is that we like kind of feel like we're special. And
Mhm.
so we've now created something that is getting closer and closer to us.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like taking a little bit of our special humanness away. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a different thing. Like, okay, so I cook a lot, and this is kind of
Sure.
a silly example, but I cook a lot and I get annoyed because I like type in, I'm like, oh, I want to make a, souffle.
Mhm.
And I have to dig through all these websites, and there's stories and ads and pictures and, whatever people write in their blogs.
Yeah.
And some of the new search capabilities just surface the recipe for you. And it's like a combination of good recipes. So it's like optimizing this for
Mhm.
you. Um, I think we're going to miss it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
I think we're going to miss it.
you can have it just create the recipes for you. I mean, then you have to go through the, at least you, with the blog, you can be reasonably assured that someone made it.
Well, yeah,
And
and you like have your favorites,
yeah,
right? I'm like,
yeah.
usually when I go here, it turns out well. Um, but are we gonna continue doing that? It's gonna reshape sort of the online marketplace quite a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I worry about security and safety issues
Yeah.
as well. Just how easy it is to make something seem real, and how difficult it is for people, especially if they're like in a heightened emotional state
Yeah.
or distracted. differentiating between what's real and what might be generated by AI.
Well, just
So-
from the cybersecurity perspective, I mean, it's going to really make detecting phishing emails harder, definitely.
It's going to make a lot of things harder.
Yeah, it's like the tip of the
It's going to
iceberg.
make a lot of things harder. But it also might make some things easier.
Yeah, yes.
So like sometimes security is so technical that it's hard to get the meaning out of things. And I think it's going to help super techie folks translate this stuff into meaningful information for people who don't have that depth of technical expertise. So I'm a little bit excited about that. Like, explain network security to me like I'm 5.
Yep.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Right. So
It's like
there's some.
They'll go to war with each other, the good robots versus the bad robots.
So where are we in that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's always the question. Can we talk just for a second, like what might be some, if you're just a personal user of AI model, like what might be some like personal guardrails when using these platforms?
Don't put your personal information in.
Got it.
Not your name, your birthday, the secret questions for your passwords. Just think about like not sharing those things. Like if you wouldn't post it on the internet, it's kind of the same idea for now. Protect yourself and protect your identity by keeping details about yourself to yourself versus entering them into a model that trains itself on people's data. There are some warnings on most systems, like please don't enter this. But it's kind of it's like tempting in a way. But I would recommend like no financial information, none of it. It's probably not going to give you anything that useful from that anyway. So definitely keep it a little bit more generic in terms of what you're willing to share about yourself and your loved ones.
Yeah, well, so beyond being a content writer for the National Cybersecurity Alliance, I'm also a playwright. And I just was kind of curious. I was like, name the plays by Barry Eitel, and it listed one that like had gotten reviews, and then it listed like 3 or 4 that just made up. And it was very adamant. And I was like, what's this about? Like what? And it just was it was a little surreal.
So yeah, I had Dolly. I typed in my own name to see like what other Margaret like what would it come up like what is a Margaret Cunningham, and it drew like this very hilarious older woman. Kind of an old-fashioned name, but it's and that's the fun part though. But you're highlighting an issue, like it made some things up.
Yeah, like made up, and it was like really adamant
about
I even told it, I was like, that I don't think that is real, and it goes, oh, it is, it's real. So yeah, it's like it's confident. It does have confidence,
and it speaks with a lot of confidence. It's never going to be like, this is going to be pretty close. It's going to say like it's A, B, and C, and you say, great, thank you. So I hate to say this because I feel like everybody is completely maxed out, right? Like, how many more things can we ask people to think critically about? Really, like what's on your phone, what's on the news, what you're looking at. And yeah, like we're really asking a lot from human beings. And we are not like unlimited battery, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not machines.
Yeah, we're not ChatGPT.
We're just not. We're not.
Yeah.
And so I think that like we really should give ourselves a little bit of grace when we make a mistake too. That's another thing that like I would highlight for anyone. If you feel like you may have like made a mistake or like put the wrong data into one of these systems, like talk to the people that need to know. There's a lot of things that we have to learn about this stuff. So there are very few experts on this right now. And even they are a little bit like, I don't know. So we can't expect people to be an expert on something that's brand new. So mistakes are inevitable and they're part of learning. So Don't hide them because we learn from each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic building the plane while flying it. But we're all on the plane.
Yeah.
I think before we go to questions, just to wrap up, I think we talked about final takeaways for if you're a personal user of an AI model, but just kind of reiterating what your final takeaways for a business might be.
Yeah. Get your crew together. Make
Mhm.
sure it's interdisciplinary.
Mhm.
Make sure you have the stakeholders there.
Mhm.
If it lives in a silo in one part of the company, it's not going to work.
Mhm.
Get something written down. Make sure that people can understand what you mean about data classification. Like
Mhm.
maybe it's like restricted or maybe it's public or whatever. Like, but make sure it's clear and guide people through this. And let them know that you anticipate it's going to change a little bit because we're still learning.
Yeah.
So I would say like tackle it with urgency and a sense of humor and an
Mhm.
open mind.
Mhm.
But decide what is okay for your company and not. Establish a formal relationship if you can with the Gen AI.
Mhm.
Determine if you want to build something in-house. Some companies are doing that. And then make sure it gets to every single person that you work with.
Mhm.
This is a huge lift for learning and development. It's a lot for people to take on and to take in. So
Mhm.
huge on the people end,
Yeah.
medium on the technical end, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll have to be a culture thing, and it's one of those things where we're I mean, we're in it, so it's like you have to talk
I
about
mean,
it.
we're using it. It's
Yeah.
here. Like
Yeah.
if you think it's not happening, it's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So, we have to just accept that, we're learning as we go, but there are ways to give opportunities for innovation while also like cushioning the fall should things go wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom so
I mean,
far.
I don't even know. By the
Yeah.
time we close today, I'll be wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's fun to talk about. I'm excited to see some of the questions that people have
Yeah.
and see what we can do. I would consider myself like really not even an expert in this at all because I think it'd be hard to be a true expert in this field. But hey,
I know you got to kind
Gary,
of wonder
come along on the journey with me, right?
yeah. I know if you got to kind of wonder with people who are putting themselves out as experts, like right now, you got to be like, okay, that's.
I mean, some of them are like, I have some people I know, I'm like, whoa, like,
yeah,
wow. And I feel behind already, I got to
yeah,
say, so.
yeah. I mean, because it has been going on for so long, and then all of a sudden, I think with these public releases, it has really
Yeah.
exploded in everyone's consciousness.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Jen and Luke have been watching the chat. Have there been any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions coming in. So someone asked, would you suggest a company utilize a paid AI service for employees versus a free service to reduce risk?
Yes, actually, the paid services typically have contractual obligations, and you can have like agreements on how the data is processed that your legal team would need to hash out. But yeah, I mean, it places a little bit more responsibility on the vendor. So if you can do it and you're not going to build one, it's a decent way to go.
There's another question. Is the false confidence exhibited by generative AI like ChatGPT something that we see getting better soon with other models?
I had a funny conversation the other day where I said, well, I guess we'll just have to make typos so that we know that we're human, that we're reading the human's response. And like the perfection and precision in some of the writing, I don't think it's going to go away. And I do think it's going to be maybe one of the more compelling voices that we hear out of the crowd. And that's, problematic for various reasons, including just like bias in the models and what's going to surface.
It doesn't equivocate. It just sort of You ask it a question, it gives you an answer.
Yeah. I mean, if someone says maybe we should go somewhere, you're like, I guess, sure. If someone's like, let's go, you're like, cool, let's go.
Yeah, I'm confident. Yeah.
There's just a lot of nuance in communication, and it has stripped out some of the sort of, hedging and, gentleness. And it comes through very clear with the message it wants to tell us.
Someone is asking, are there any AI platforms that are only allowed to pull from trusted sites like .gov sites, or have transparency as to use sources and are not allowed to make things up?
I don't know. Unfortunately, I just don't know.
I mean,
It would be hard to verify.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions about guidance or resources or best practices to share with employees. Margaret, are you aware of any other resources or maybe things that are easy to share with others?
Not that I have on like the top of my head. I think that mostly it's there. There are a few things, and I'd have to dig it out. There are some very nice guides on like what prompt engineering looks like and what some of the risks are, but I would have to dig it out. I can't think offhand of like the gold standard resource at this time. That's how fresh we are.
We have a little bit on our website, and I'm sure it'll be a growing library, but yeah, no, it's still so new.
Someone asked, what should we be teaching students about AI?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for them to understand the risks because it's very abstract. So whenever we can make things concrete, that's ideal for younger people. I know that there have been a lot of campaigns like, how far can I share this thing so I can, show my first grade class that it goes from here to 5 million people in 2 days. That's going to be much harder to do with these systems. But I hope that some of the innovation will help us teach about it in a way that's meaningful and that resonates for people at all levels of ability and age. But yeah, it's a huge opportunity to start building these out. But highlighting the basics of like, don't put your personal information into the systems. It's very hard to show the impact of that right now. What were you going to say, Barry?
I was just thinking like just trying to get everyone, protect people's critical thinking skills is going to be difficult, because when you just copy and paste, I mean, that's going to be I think with academia, that's like such a big concern right now. So I mean, yeah, there's going to have to be some solutions or guidelines. People will need to figure that out.
We have a question here. How do you think the bad actors will use AI? So how do you see the future of hacking, phishing, etc.?
I mean, they've been using it for a while. There's been a lot of machine learning in the background in the threat landscape. One of the top 3 ways that people make mistakes is because they've made a mistake in what they perceive. So it's called a perceptual error. Like I saw something that I thought was real or different, and I believed it or I acted on it. It's very common in like aviation. And that's why most people, when they start flying, they can't just use the equipment, right? They have to be able to see the land around them. And right now, it's like a different grade of pilot's license when you can start doing like instrument only flights. And so right now, like this progression to differentiating between what's real and what's not is going to challenge humanness to like probably the maximum that we've ever been challenged, especially online. because it's just so easy to say, like, make a copy of this, or make it sound like this, or make it look just like this. So like entering your credentials into the wrong site is going to look like you're entering it into the right site. And the barrier to entry is much lower for the mean guys, mean people. I don't have an uplifting one on that.
Yeah. Well, you can go in and create an app or programming on, one of these models right now. And so it's like, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad.
Another question here. Do you foresee companies disclosing when a chat is AI versus a live agent, I guess, when you're talking to customer service?
I think it's a little bit outside of my lane. I don't know. But I do think that we're probably going to see an uptick in guidance and regulations and standards in this, especially as it becomes problematic. There's also sort of like, like if I tell people it's a bot, then like I have a lower liability if it tells you the wrong information. But like, I'm not a lawyer. I do think that the way things are changing, marking things as like human generated versus AI generated might not be too far-fetched, but I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't have that great of a crystal ball yet. I'll ask for one.
I know Google, in talking about either their search labs or Bard, just their AI products, when they any image that is created with their AI products, they're actually injecting like meta data saying that it is AI. But then, of course, you have to trust these big companies to do that, and all of them to do it. So,
yeah. I think France is trying to make sure that like social media pictures that are heavily filtered are marked as filtered. So I know that like there is some pushback on just how pervasive these technologies are and what they represent online and what people believe is true, because it is truly damaging in some situations. So,
oh, definitely.
We're moving on it, but
yeah.
People change slowly. Technology changes very fast.
Question here. If you were the CIO of an organization, would you restrict the use of the platform until practices are established, like by blocking URLs from the organization? Is it even worth the effort knowing employees could work around it?
I think it would depend on the domain I worked in, how sensitive the information is that I work with, whether or not losing the data would harm others or not, and what my controls look like to start with. So like, what are my baseline controls? Ultimately, we have to be able to say yes to doing risky things. That's business, right? Helping people do it more safely is the goal. There is no zero mistake person, and there's no 0% risk. So again, like establishing the guardrails, both technical and behavioral, communicating with people, training people, helping people understand the difference between the approved route and the unapproved route and why it matters, is going to be critical. But doing a like 100% hard block is probably not very realistic. But then also being 100% permissive is probably foolish as well.
Great. With that, I think we can close out. Lucas, if you want to bring up our last slide. If anyone has any questions after this webinar, feel free to contact us. Our email is info@StaySafeOnline.org. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we're always posting new content to our website, StaySafeOnline.org. And as mentioned, I'm sure our resources on these topics will be quickly evolving. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you so much, Barry and Margaret, for this great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a real pleasure. I have a feeling we'll be talking about this for a long time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
we'll see you back
get
here
ready for
soon.
2024. Yeah, or sooner.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Take
Thank you,
care.
everybody.